Bro, I had a case. I had a.
You write notes to 7?
I had a sweet section. I was supposed to come to this.
Okay, so what we're gonna go over is how do we graph this type of function.
Okay.
So now we have an A, B, C, D. A is gonna affect what? Amplitude. What is B is gonna affect?
The period.
Period. And what C is gonna affect?
The starting
Where
point.
starts?
The vertex?
You're actually right. It's a starting point, but an X. Okay?
Okay.
Because this is gonna provide is inside the parenthesis is to provide a phase shift. It shift left and right. But in this case, if it's minus pi, what does that shift? Shift left or right?
Right.
Inside the parentheses is always what?
Opposite.
Opposite. So it's
Right.
negative, so it's shifting
Right.
right. Okay? Now what does 1 do?
It goes up?
Goes up 1. So those are the things that you guys already know from transformation.
Yeah.
Now we're gonna implement all the stuff into 1. So we're gonna take everything slow and do things right, and to think about all those things. So let's look at it. If you have a negative 2 sine of 2x minus pi plus 1, we can graph those functions here. And I want you to think about a couple things. I want you to think about only the amplitude right now, not the periods, and not anything else. Okay, so guess. And I'm still taking extra credit for this. So only 2 people turn in, Mary and Rachel. So
Is it for each?
yeah, so each 10 points. So maximum is 20.
Each one is marker down, right?
It's not a record.
How much more are you taking?
I need a lot more. I need to go up. All right, so we're gonna start by graphing this. We're gonna look at what we need to do. First, we're still looking for the basic information. The basic information is this. This is the first step. The first step is to figure out the amplitude. The amplitude is equal to absolute value of -2, that's equal to 2. Okay? So why did I only ask you to look for amplitude, not anything else? Because period is different. So what happened is this format is a little bit different in this format. What's the difference?
There's no B.
Well, there is a B, but
But like, not.
It's subtracting 5.
what is it? What? B is not 1.
It's been distributed.
It's been distributed. Right. So do you see that B is right here too? But the B need to take it out in order to change to this format. So this is the part that you guys gonna forget is, and even though I told you now, later when on the test, guess what you're gonna forget? Factor out of B. So make sure. So I write in the make sure. Factor out of B.
I'm gonna write B.
Factor out B. So then you have a B out there, so make sure you do this. But this is what people is gonna forget. This is a very important step, right? It's a very important step. Before you find period, factor out. Because your shift is different. Your horizontal shift, and if you take a 2 inside, you think the horizontal shift is pi right, but it's actually not pi to the right. It's actually pi over 2 to the right. So those are the things that you have to make sure is in this format. It's much better than this format. Questions about here? So now the question is probably how to factor. So here's a 1. So I'm going to take the second step. I'm going to say factor out. Factor out B and determine the period. So before we don't have that issue. So we're going to take out a B. So how do I do that? So y is equal to -2 sine of 2, and then If I factor out b, what am I gonna get inside? So a lot of people have problem factoring out. When you're factoring out a 2, that means I take this value, I divide it by 2. Does that make sense? So that's gonna give me 2x divided by 2 is gonna give me x. But what is pi divided by 2? Pi over 2. Now we gotta figure out what is the periods. So what is my period here? Period is always 2 pi over b, right? So which is 2 pi over what?
2 power 2.
2, which is pi. Now third is I'm gonna figure out the quarter periods. Find quarter period. Yes, David?
I was trying to catch up.
Then I'm gonna take a period, I'm gonna divide it by 4. Okay, so this is a period divided by 4. The same thing is pi times 1 over 4, which is pi over 4. Now, remember when we're graphing from Algebra 1, your teacher says graphing a line, you're going to plug in x equal to -2, x equal to -1, x equal to 0, x equal to 1, x equal to 2. How many points is that? 5, right? Here we also need 5 points, but we need to construct our points now. Now here's how do you construct your point easily. If you construct your point properly, then you're gonna say, let's change them to have a same denominator. There's a reason why I change them to same denominator. Because this is a pi, this is a pi over 4. Now each increment is gonna be pi over 4, so that's what I would say, let's change it to same denominator. How do I change it to same denominator? What would it be pi equal to in terms of over 4? 4 pi over 4, good. Is that okay? Because now they have the same denominator. Now I know how to increase on each. I'm not graphing yet. I just need to figure out 5 points though. I'm gonna figure out the x0. What's my starting point? Well, that's the 4th step. The 4th step is to figure out where the shift is. Now we're gonna look at a new equation. Look at here. So look at new equation. New equation.
So what was the new equation?
The new equation is
That factor out a b.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so this is the case that we're looking at. We're looking at this part. Pi over 2. So we're gonna use it right here for number 4. So that is shifting how much? How much radian and to which direction? Shifting right or left? Right, right? Because this is negative pi over 2, so it'll be shifting right. So shift right, which is right is a positive, which is nice, which is pi over 2. So that means your x0 is going to be pi over 2. So your starting point is going to be pi over 2.
okay. Hold on.
Why?
Why does it have to?
Huh?
Why is it starting at?
Because I'm shifting right pi over 2. So the whole graph is shifting right, right? That starting point is going to shift right. And then, so that means my first point I'm picking is that first point.
Okay.
What about the 1?
Louis, why is it pi over 2 and not pi and then like?
Not pi because you factor out a 2.
Oh, wait,
So
wait, yeah,
you
yeah,
have
yeah,
to take
yeah.
out 2 to find a shift. Because here is this is a fake. It's not real. It's not real because it's not shifting pi over. Because there was 2 in the front. You have to take out that 2 first. That 2 is going to determine the periods. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Now, your x0 is going to be pi over 2. Now, what do I say? Do I want a same denominator as over 4? I do, right? So, so this one's going to change to, what is it, in term pi over 4? 2 pi over 4, right? So now, your x1 is going to have an increase. How much increase? is pretty much each quarter period. Each quarter period is gonna change. So I start at 2 pi over 4, I'm gonna add, so from here to here, I'm gonna add a quarter periods. So what's 2 pi over 4 plus quarter period?
3 pi over 4.
3 pi over 4. And the same thing, from here to here, I'm gonna add 1/4 period is what?
Pi.
4 pi over 4. I don't do pi yet because I can convert it later because in the grid it's much easier to graph that way. So 5 pi over 4. And 5 point is gonna be 6 pi over 4. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So what we're gonna do is, now the last step, the very, very important step. So step 5 is find the midline. Well, midline told me it's like your ocean is going up, right? Your ocean is they call it what? When they come in, this is what they call reside. The resides go back down. What does it come in? It rise, so it rise, right? But the whole wave rise, right? So the midline is always rise. Now, the wave is gonna go like this. It's still going like this. But when you go back down, when you're kind of receding, like when it's at nighttime, you see the ocean start going back down because the moon is attracting the water, and then it's going back down. So the wave is gonna lower. So the whole midline is going down. So the whole wave is going down. Take the whole wave with you. So that's the kind of like center of everything. So it's gonna take it down. So the midline is very important. So the midline is indicated by here. This is the midline. So then y is equal to positive 1 is the midline. You got it, okay? Huh?
Wait, what is the tides and stuff?
The moon is making the oceans
Yeah.
receding.
It's because the gravity going around?
Yeah, so
Yeah, who told you? It is, we learned this in 7th grade.
yeah. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna do, imagine how much math you learning here? More than math. And there's actually a video about it. It actually tells you more explanations. If you look at physics girl, there's a girl that she does a lot of physics video, and she explains very well. So here, where's my midline? I will graph my midline. So here, I don't really follow the step. I do this very important step, which is the midline. Midline is what? 1. So 1 is right here. So I draw a dotted line here because that's going to help me. Okay. Now this is my first step here. This is the first step when I'm graphing. So I'm using green. The first step. The second step is looking at where the first starting point is. So this is a 2, right? So 2 is going to be x0. Where's x0? 2 pi over 4. So I'm going to go to pi over 4. I'm going to have a same increment, so that way it makes it easier. It's 2 pi over 4. Now let's look back at the chart. Where does sine start? Sine start at midline or maximum or minimum? Look at the chart on the right.
Midline.
It start at midline. So which is good, that start right here. Because if the cosine is going to start on the top. But, so here is the third step. The third step is looking at here. So when you graph, you look at that sine. Sine is decided to start at midline, and -2 decided it's going to go down. And how much down is it? So if you look at this part here, they will tell you sine start at midline, -2 is going to go down, how many units? So your next unit is going to go down, how many units? 2. So you got to count, not counting from the x-axis. You can count from here. It's going to go down 1, 2, and then move y over. So then that's going to be 3 pi over 4. Are you following me? Now, of course, when they go to reach the minimum, what it has to come to? Next one. After the minimum, what happened? Go back to midline. So it'll be 4 pi over 4. The thing's gonna go back to midline. Now, a lot of people think about the graphing is like this. It's not. Because you go back from the midline, go to minimum, to the mid, what's the next thing? it's gonna go up, max. Okay, so 5 pi over 4, and a lot of students just say, oh, that's oscillating here, but that's wrong. It's actually 5 pi over 4. So it's gonna go up 2 units up top. So this one's gonna go here, go here, go here. And then 6 pi over 4, it's gonna come here.
Wait, why? Why? Yeah.
Why?
Like, why does it start in the midline and then go to the maximum?
Okay, so the order over there, right? So usually you start at mid, right? And then if it's negative, it's gonna go to min, right? And then what's come back down, it had to go back. Imagine this is a curve, this is a wave. The wave, this is the bottom part of the wave, right? So it's gonna go to the middle. But there's also on top of that wave, on top of the midline. The wave is always like this, right? So there's on the top, so there's a max. And then come back to mid. That's what the order is going to be. If you start here, going down, what's going down has to come back up. And what's come back up has to go to the highest point, and go back to the middle, and go back to the lowest point.
Okay.
It keeps on oscillating between two.
Okay.
Got it? Questions? Do you guys feel like kind of lost? Okay, so we're gonna do the second one, me and you. So we're gonna graph this into this page, and that way you can see it better, or you can graph it, you can keep this graph. But here we're gonna turn this one to this page, and we're gonna graph the next one over there. So, next question is gonna be here. Yeah, so this one's here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna ask you to find all information before you graph. So you're gonna graph on the third page, which is the one has a grid of pi over 6. Now you pay attention. Each unit here is a pi over 6, right? So what I'm gonna do is, if you break up the half, that's gonna be pi over 12. Okay, you're gonna have to. Can you move to here?
Me?
Yeah, your curly hair is kind of up, yeah. Arjun, can you move back? Because it's a big head that's on the.
This is big.
Okay, so let's find all the information first. So find out the amplitude. What?
Jonas is talking to me.
Jonas?
Yeah.
Say hi.
Why'd you put a girl under that?
So let's start with the first step. What is amplitude? Don't graph yet.
2.
You're gonna graph on the actual grid, which is this one. This one is with the pi over 6 is the grid, and you're gonna use that one because we're gonna learn how to deal with different grids. Now each grid is actually pi over 12, but the label one is all pi over 6. So those are the things you have to pay attention to. So let's find all the information just like what I did there. Find amplitude. What's after amplitude? Factor out, yes. And then
Period.
factor out, you can find period, find quarter period. Make sure period, quarter period, and the starting point, they all have the same denominator because that's easier for you to add. It's easier for you to add each units. Okay? So you follow all the steps there before you graph it. We're gonna go through how to graphing together, and then you're gonna graph one last one by yourself, which is this one. Yes. Yes, that's the thing set from yesterday. So that's one thing you had to know. Now, it's not always 2 pi over b depending on the trig function. Tangent is going to be pi over b, but right now we're not dealing with that, and you're not going to have tests on that yet. So right now, just only worry about 2 pi over b. So can you find all the information and list all 5 possible points, which is, and make sure they have the same denominator, so for you it's easy to add. The add each thing is much easier. Yeah, do that one, the first one then.
Wait, so
So factor out 2 first, or factor out 3 first, depends. So make sure you can follow all the steps first. You finish? And then you can try to graph it. But on the graphing on the 3rd page, the 3rd page has a graphing grid of pi over 6 instead of pi over 4.
I know.
Cosine doesn't start at midline. Those of you guys want to choose to start, cosine does not start at midline. Yes. You might need this if you're not here yesterday. You might take a look.
Oh, wait, so it would start.
And you might watch yesterday's video because Sophie said it really helped.
Okay.
Can you let me show me all the information you found?
You didn't write the information. You see? This is why you got it wrong the first time. Like, doesn't fit.
Shifting. Yep. Perfect. Rachel?
Still. Because it writes.
Some people already did it. Jeremy, you already did it. If you want to check, you can check with Jeremy, see what your graph look like.
Oh my god.
So for me, I'm gonna start off a little bit. Is that okay?
This is like.
Amplitude is what? Amplitude is 2.
Oh, you have 2 pi. Wait.
That's equal to 2, right? Now period. But do I do period first? I factor out, right? So second step, I factor out. So y is equal to -2 cosine of 3 x minus what? Pi of 3 minus 1.
So it would be like that. Cool. That was rude.
Giordano, got it? Okay, so the third step is what? Period. Oh no, this is period, I haven't found it yet. So period is what? 2 pi over 3. So that's my period. And the fourth step is period divided by 4, which is quarter period, so it'll be 2 pi over 3 times by 1 over 4. Did you do this? You had to divide it by 4, so it's going to be 2 pi over 12, right? And that's which is a pi over 6. That's how I can count. This is 3. Pi over 6. Now what happens when you get to pi over 6? Well, pi over 6 is going to be
I just picked all numbers.
period is pi over 6. Now what do you do next? Look for the shift. Yes, so shift is right here, right? The shift's right here, so that's gonna be pi over 3. So I'm gonna erase this part, I'm gonna write in red, so it's pi over 3. So pi over 3 is gonna be red, so 4 is x0, it's gonna be, well, it's moving right, so it's positive. If it's positive, it's negative pi over 3. So you gotta make sure that this sign, today I will play with a trick a little bit. If I change it to positive, then things can change it a little bit. Because your starting point is gonna be on the left side of the y-axis. So then the x0 is gonna be pi over 3. But we say we wanna choose the same denominator, right? So that means I need to get to what? What's pi over 3 and same denominator over 6? 2 pi over 6, good. So now x1, I'm just adding each one. So 2 pi over 6, what's the next one? 3 pi over 6, because from here to here is adding a pi, right? A quarter period, right? So x2, so that's easy for you to add. I know it's pi over 2, but it's easy for you to add. So now this one's going to be what? 4 pi over 6. 5 pi over 6. And what? 6 pi over 6, hopefully. So those 5 points. So I'm going to graph it. Where's my graph? Well, I'm going to start at 2 pi over 6. So I'm going to do here. So 2 pi over 6. Now you can graph on the grids. Guess what? The grid, each grid is pi over 12. What's pi over 12 plus pi over 12? Each grid on that paper is pi over 12. But they say pi over 12 plus pi over 12 is pi over 6, which makes sense. Pi over 12 plus pi over 12. Now, be careful. Which function do I look at? -2 cosine. Are they start at midline? It's negative. You start on the bottom. How far below? 2 units. Good. Now, also, I forgot to look for something. The most important line. What is the midline, right? Why you go to -1? I didn't look for that. So that -1 is going to be right here. That's my midline. But it's how many units below the midline? 2. 1, 2, right? And then 3 pi over 6. It's going to go back to midline. And then what's the next point, Rachel? If I'm going from midline, minimum to midline, what's the next point? You go to max, so it's 2, 1. And then you go into, this one's a 4 pi over 6, and this is a 5 pi over 6. It's going to go back to the midline, and the 6 pi over 6 is going to go to and then they keep on going. It's going to repeat.
I just left this in.
Now you're going to try to do this on your own now. This on your own. This one's a little bit more challenging because your quarter period and your starting point is not completely the same denominator. You need to find out what the same denominator. This is going to be in term pi over 12 now. Pi over 12 is each small grid. So you can use that paper to help you graph.
I need more graphing paper. I need more graphing paper, I'll give you more. I put like 1,000 of them.
You're something special.
Wow, Rachel and Jimmy get along. That's special.
No, we're really not. He's being so annoying right now, actually. You just missed it. So helpful. What? You know the video still, right? Is it? That was Jamie. Why would you say that?
Wait, what? No.
That's a good point.
I love 7th period. that means you're in a good mood, because you only say that when you're happy. We are
For now.
There's no digital proof.
Michelle, do we use these for this one?
Huh?
Do we use this one for this one?
No, this one's gonna be used 5 or 6. For the second one?
Yeah.
This one?
Shut up.
That's it?
Good, make sure those two have got it. If you wanna check your answer, Sophie's got it for the second one?
I'm not
Does
even on
she
the
really?
period.
Yeah. Sophie? You're better in English or in math?
English part.
I think you're pretty good at math.
That's That's like my favorite class.
What about this class?
No, I like this class, but like.
I know, I just like heard a little.
What assignment?
Like first you choose fragment over me.
But I'm
Assignment
gonna
over me is okay. Fragment over me.
It's not fragment, it's just like, that was like an essay job, and I had to.
I like fragment.
It's okay.
Are you doing that?
He's always said the thing.
No, he just talks too much. Like, he says the same thing.
You're one lucky into this. Is that your English class?
Like, I'm not saying anything bad.
He's always like
He's a good teacher.
what did he always say? He was a common phrase.
Right.
Right?
He's like, right?
Right?
You're
Right?
rude.
Right?
And H-L. You're being called.
I be a student, I was making fun of him. They start drawing lines every time you say right, so they start counting them.
Do you not understand that H-L's 2 years?
So they're like whole page.
Oh, they do that?
Come on.
Get to work.
Is the period pi?
The period is not pi. Period is definitely not pi. Oh, 2 by 2? Oh, yeah, it's pi.
Hey.
I'm sorry, it's pi.
I was like, what? How did I?
No, but Mr. Then
I guess-
I said, yeah, it is. And she was, no, it's not. I said, oh, yeah, it is.
I was like, no, it's not.
H-L's like this.
Let me learn.
And yeah, H-L, every all H-L talks for 1 year.
David, come back.
6th grade.
David, please come back. Because he's being annoying.
Okay, it's like, yeah. Are you thinking of
Who's
You
commenting?
got a thumb up.
Everybody can bring up a comment. Yeah,
For a
they're,
regular site.
Oh, people come in your video.
I'm AP Psych, I've been doing that class, I've done
that's
lots.
all the comments.
I've done lots.
People comment on your videos?
Yeah.
Wow, you're gonna be YouTube famous, Miss D. I can feel it. There's 2 guys.
Hold us dislike.
I don't dislike your
So
videos.
yeah, oh, was that one that everybody said after?
Wait,
your
comment
missing
on
words?
this.
And you're like, now it's.
So, what are you, wait.
How much time I have? Jeremy, how much time I have?
2 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not. So like, wait, I have a question. Wait. First you do your story. So this is right. So then I would put right over 60. But then you
Make sure everybody improves on this.
right, and then like 4, right? So what I did is like you put pi and then divided by 4. So like this is what I did. Nothing. You divide 12 by 4. It's 3 squares. So every 3 squares. I guess you have a bit of humor here. And then use it
Do it over 12.
Yeah, but I might take.
Convert them both to over 12 since you're going by fourths.
I was trying to I did it like
So that way you know the entire.
I did it according to the
Well, I know because I.
And then where's the title before?
I'll be right there to the Yeah, but I told you.
what I did was
No matter what
there's
time period is, because.
look at the right. There's 2 squares that make okay,
So-
right? So you divide this one by 4.
What I want you to do is to get your computer out to check your graph is right. So here's how do you check on the decimals. So guys, I want you to think about it, how do you do on decimals. Yeah. So get your computer out and check on decimals. I think there's a decimal tab already open.
Oh, it's already, you want me to put it back so I can put it? Because it's already raised.
Okay, just unhighlight it. Unhighlight both graphs. Yeah, just change that. Okay, so get your computer out. I'll teach you how to check today when you graph it. I'll teach you how to check.
Ah, I was writing.
Okay.
That was not even nice.
Sorry.
I was writing and it just went pitch black on me. I was like, I don't even know what I was writing. That was not nice.
No, not. So how do you check on decimal? When you graph it, you have to have something to check whether you did it right. Not to copy, but to check what you did. So what you do is, I will graph the midline. So for me, I always start by graphing two things. I graph midline first. So at this, I will go and start by graphing midline. And I can change the midline to like a maybe dotted line. And then I can go with here. And then I'm going to choose to graph this. I'll make sure the 2 is outside the parentheses though.
So you did a new
Okay.
equation.
So now I will graph it, but see this axis is 2, 4, 6, 8. So I will click on here, the wrench here. See the x-axis, I change the step to what? Pi. So typing pi here, they will show up a pi. So that way you can check whether you did it right or wrong. So you see this unit now is a pi. And not only that, you can click it here, they actually tell you if you did it right. They actually told you here, see if they did it wrong. Oh,
You forgot to put +1 on the.
this one forgot a +1. Hey.
Wow.
Okay. So you see that this point here, that is all showing that point, and you need that to reflect to yourself to say if I'm graphing this correct or wrong. So make sure you double check your answer. I'm not going to give you too many graphs, but make sure you double check your answers. Okay? When you double check your answer, that you can see this, and not only that, you can see when they cross x-axis. That's why you graph in the midline. If you graph in midline, they will see why you cross axis. But mainly this part, make sure you click the wrench to go to x-axis and change the step to pi. That makes sure your life is a lot easier. So that way you know how to check properly. Thank you.
You're still on the lecture?
Yeah.
So you just leave it there the whole time?
Oh, how you end it?
You should Hey, it's on my